It's that primal urge, right? The one that makes you want to get to the highest point and just carve your initials
Right.
or, tag your name somewhere it absolutely shouldn't be. That deep, like ancient human need to just leave a mark.
To say I was here.
Exactly. And when you look at the history of it, it feels less about art sometimes and way more about just asserting your presence.
But that assertion used to be so incredibly high stakes.
Mhm.
I mean, it required real physical risk, real grit.
Yeah.
We're talking spray paint and a clock that's ticking down before the cops, or worse, a rival crew, shows up to completely ruin your night. It was an act of rebellion that was like rooted in your body.
And the structure behind that rebellion is what really gets me. It's almost corporate in its design.
How so?
Well, you think about the X-Vandals. They started back in '71, which, wow, makes them the oldest crew still going.
Still around, yeah.
They didn't just paint. They operated with this incredible organizational discipline. It wasn't just art. It was a strategy for domination.
They were absolute pioneers in that. Thinking about graffiti as this unified, organized movement. It wasn't just a bunch of individual acts of expression.
Right.
And the way they handled membership.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a secret society or some super selective fraternity. They had completely closed ranks.
Invitation only.
Totally. You couldn't just walk up and ask to join. Someone with massive respect had to vouch for you. They had to see your output, your ingenuity.
Exactly. The rules were just pure, cold meritocracy, which is fascinating for an illegal operation.
Mm-hmm.
Race, age, creed, gender, none of it mattered.
Which in 1971, New York City.
Was revolutionary in itself. It was only about your output and your ingenuity. Could you produce excellent, fast work? Could you stay off the cops' radar and not get rolled by other gangs? They were running a tight ship, and it was all focused on pure, undeniable impact. That discipline is why they lasted.
And their method of announcing their presence was just, it was genius. Strategic brilliance.
And the launch?
Yeah, the launch. Think about it. Their first night out, the 7 original members, they go to their different areas, different boroughs, different subway lines, and they wrote only X-Vandals.
Just a blanket announcement?
No individual tags, just the crew name. It was a total stealth campaign.
Right.
Imagine that next Monday morning, everyone going to work or school sees X-Vandals everywhere, all across the city, all over the subway system.
Yeah, and they have no idea.
They have absolutely no idea who these ghosts were or how many there were or where they came from. It sounds like a highly effective, almost terrifying corporate takeover.
Yeah.
But done with spray paint and stealth across the entire city's infrastructure.
It's the ultimate example of branding, using infrastructure. But you mentioned the human cost of that discipline, which is the flip side of that whole strategy.
Oh, the physical risk was just.
Yeah.
It was immense. You read these accounts from some of the writers like Wicked Gary or Ree. Ree was just 12 years old when he got brought into the crew.
12?
Yeah, and he was from the Bronx, but most of the crew was based in Brooklyn. So they had to cross these vast, often really hostile territorial lines. The subway wasn't just transportation for them.
It was the network.
It was the necessary bloodstream that linked all the writers across totally different, often rival territories.
So the trains were the communication network, the distribution channel for their art. They had to master the system to master the city.
Right. And Gary talked about the preparation. It wasn't just about having your can. It was about the outfit. You had to wear sneakers.
Of course.
Comfortable, broken-in sneakers. Because if you went out to hit a place like Sheepshead Bay, way out in deep Brooklyn, you knew you were going to have to run.
Right.
From the police, who were constantly patrolling the subway yards, or from rival gangs who did not want you marking their territory. It wasn't just art. It was this adventure fueled by adrenaline and planning and the constant imminent threat of violence or jail time.
It's hard to even imagine that level of physical and psychological commitment today when the worst thing that happens is your server crashes.
I know.
The adventure of it all, the sheer stakes. It's impossible to compare that physical, high-risk 20th century rebellion to today, where rebellion is often just a glitch in an algorithm or a post that gets taken down.
The currency of risk has changed completely.
It's the difference between leaving a physical, traceable fingerprint on a wall and just generating a disposable data packet in the cloud.
We've been thinking about this one for a while, actually. This whole idea of what happens when that street art impulse meets a world where, nothing is actually physical anymore.
It feels like the urban landscape itself is shifting. It's becoming less about spray cans and more about code or data streams or augmented reality. The Kansas isn't a subway car anymore. It's a global server farm, a shared digital overlay.
And that shift, It just hits me right in the gut.
Hmm.
What do we lose when the art loses its sense of place, its connection to actual geography? And what about its guaranteed impermanence?
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of the street tag was that it was fleeting. Its death was built into its birth.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start with the soul of what street art was and still is when it's physical. The power is just undeniable. You look at artists like Invader or Banksy,
Hmm.
they got global recognition because they fundamentally defied the norms. They just bypassed the whole gallery system.
That completely.
And they confronted political and social issues head on, redefining the boundaries of contemporary art just by choosing the right wall, the right moment, and, the right political target.
They made the public space the museum. It created
Yeah.
this sort of anti-establishment structure that succeeded by operating completely outside the establishment.
Yeah.
Street art functions as this incredible cultural mirror, reflecting back the anxieties and desires of the community it serves. I was reading about these massive community-driven murals in places like Delhi,
Oh, interesting.
and how the art is actively helping bridge generational divides just by placing these shared narratives in a public, accessible space.
That's fascinating because the visual language of the older generation and the younger generation are often so far apart. How does a static piece of art even manage to work on that level?
It fosters a dialogue, not just about politics, but about these deep shared concepts:
Mhm.
identity, culture, nature, community.
So it's a common ground.
Exactly.
Hey.
And there was this one compelling example of a mural of birds, which was inspired by a fusion of local Indian and Mexican cultural motifs, and it was supposed to symbolize freedom and diversity within the community.
Okay.
And when it went up, it sparked these immediate but totally divergent interpretations.
Give me the breakdown of that divergence.
So a 17-year-old saw it, immediately snapped a photo, and thought, this bird is breaking free, this belongs on my Instagram. They focused on the idea of modern liberation,
Right.
and they saw this little window that was painted into the bird's body as a reminder that nature still exists
Ah.
if you only bother to look up from your phone. It was
Mhm.
like actionable inspiration for a digital native.
A call to engagement, but through the lens of social media.
Precisely.
Mhm.
But then an older person, someone who had lived their entire life in that neighborhood, looked at the exact same piece, same color, same window, and interpreted it as a call to reconnect with nature, with each other.
Wow.
They saw it not as freedom from history, but freedom through communal memory. So you have the same physical art occupying the same square footage, but sparking totally different needs. Inspiration for the young, historical reflection for the old.
And it's a physical presence, right? That shared space allows that cultural synchronicity to happen in real time.
Yes.
That, to me, is the core value that gets lost in digital art. You can't just copy and paste that kind of profound, localized, communal moment. It really speaks to the humility of the physical act.
What do you mean by humility?
So I came across this interview with an artist named Day Cameron. He does these large-scale traditional graffiti pieces, but he's using like charcoal, ink, and paint, often on natural surfaces.
Oh, wow.
And he talks about this constant philosophical conflict he has when he chooses to paint over the natural world.
That must be an intense ethical consideration. You're bringing your own creation, your mark, but you're also kind of enacting a minor destruction upon something that was already there. You're replacing it.
He admitted that the main casualties of his process are the tiny, often ignored natural elements. You know, the spiders, the bugs, the moss, the lichen.
A little different.
All these little structures of life that he knows intellectually and emotionally are way more beautiful than anything I could ever create. And that realization, that immediate, tangible vulnerability is a profound lesson in humility and respect for life.
Yeah.
It's something that only comes from physically placing yourself in a space and knowing that your act of creation is also an act of erasure.
That is an emotional truth right there.
Yeah.
The art isn't just about the finished product. It's about the materials, the setting, and recognizing the destruction that's inherent in the process.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with code, the concept of destruction is just a delete command. It doesn't carry that same weight of killing something real, however small.
He also had this incredible phrasing for graffiti. He called it new outer space.
New outer space. I like that.
He means that the form and the tools feel futuristic. The aerosol can, the rapid delivery, despite the material reality of the paint itself. And he translates that essential graffiti mindset even into his photography.
How does that work?
He asks himself, can I capture the moment quickly? Can I tell the story with minimum effort, balancing grittiness and beauty? and fundamentally not caring about the technical quality of the image.
So that's the street logic applied to documentation. It's about documenting the moment, the fascinating, messy, dangerous part of the world you're seeing at that time. It's almost turning the photo itself into kind of photo tag.
And that mindset, capturing the ephemeral nature of the street and documenting it instantly, that's the bridge between the old world and the new. But speaking of documentation, the real painful irony of physical street art is how desperately we try to preserve the very thing that was born to be impermanent.
It's a complete paradox. The art is created under the assumption that it's going to be washed away by the rain, or buffed out by the city, or painted over by a rival. And yet, the moment it gains cultural significance, people fight tooth and nail to keep it alive forever.
I read about this project in the UK by Art UK that's on a massive 3-year mission to archive images of about 5,000 murals.
5,000, just in the UK.
Just in the UK. And that number alone tells you the scope of what we're losing.
So why the urgency for this specific archival project? Is it just about preservation for preservation's sake?
It's structural decay and urban development. Murals are constantly being lost when buildings are demolished for new housing or commercial developments. The project is just trying to preserve a record of this incredibly ephemeral, highly localized art form before the physical canvas just disappears entirely.
And you see this conflict play out constantly in the news.
All the time, like officials moving to topple a 3-story building in Dover because it had a major Banksy mural on it.
Right, which sparked massive public criticism and preservation efforts.
That's deliberate destruction for development. But then you have the complete opposite, like officials in Venice restoring a fading Banksy piece on a canal wall.
But even that action is controversial, because critics argue that the deterioration, the flaking paint, the way the elements had claimed the work, was part of the artist's intent. You destroy the meaning by restoring the material.
It just highlights the impossibility of controlling an artwork's meaning or even its lifespan once it's in the public sphere. The artist gives up control the second the tag is placed. Their intent becomes almost irrelevant to the life cycle of the art.
So if the art is born to die, but society decides it has to live, what's the technological solution for that? Like immortality?
It's apps like CNBS. It was described as a way of highlighting and experiencing street art on a deeper, more accessible level.
Okay.
So users can hunt for murals, find the precise geographical location, and critically learn the artist's meaning, their process, or the community context right there on their phone.
So it turns discovery into a digitized, shareable, and searchable activity. It's not just documenting that it exists. It's providing the context that the physical environment sometimes lacks. A virtual museum layered onto the real world.
Right.
I can see the appeal of that for the learner in all of us, the ability to immediately contextualize and discover.
But it confirms the essential contradiction, right? The physical art now needs a persistent, verifiable digital twin just to survive the threat of erasure, whether that erasure is natural decay or the wrecking ball.
And that digital twin is where the discussion gets structurally fascinating, because now we move from static art to the kinetic energy of the creation itself,
Yes.
to motion data.
Yes.
It's not about the finished image anymore. It's about the process of the tag.
Okay, let's talk about capturing that movement. I was totally captivated by these projects like Graffiti Analysis 2.0 and Dust Tag.
Okay.
They aren't focusing on the visual aesthetics of the final tag, the perfect lines or the shading. They are trying to capture the very movement, the physical hand style itself, in pure data.
It's the digitization of kinetic energy. Dust Tag is an iPhone app, right, that uses the phone's internal sensors to visualize the motion involved in creating a tag.
Exactly. It's analyzing the speed, the pressure, the angular velocity of the hand, all these subconscious elements that make up a writer's signature style.
And that motion data is recorded, analyzed, and then archived in this open searchable database called 0000000book.com.
This isn't just a database of photos, it's a database of physical movements.
And all of this kinetic information is standardized and saved in graffiti markup language, or GML files.
So you're translating a rapid, physical, often illegal act and expression of self into a piece of pure code that can be analyzed like a scientific diagram or a biometric signature.
That's where the structure side of my brain just lights up. They've motion captured tags from influential writers like Scene and Katsu.
Wow.
It elevates the physical technique into an abstract, universal data point. A tag is no longer just vandalism. It's a unique, complex data visualization, a piece of performance art captured in code.
And The deep irony of this is it's so profound. The whole point of a tag is speed, style, and anonymity. It's meant to be fleeting and hard to trace.
Right.
But now we have technology that permanently archives and analyzes the precise biomechanics of that moment of creation. It's like turning the adrenaline rush of the illegal act into a permanent 3D animation available for study.
And that leads directly to how we perceive space itself.
Yeah, the comparison I saw was incredible. Vehicles like the internal combustion engine and the infrastructure that supports it, they collapsed time and distance centuries ago.
Yeah.
Now the internet is collapsing space and place.
We went from Lewis and Clark walking across America in 3 years to flying coast to coast in 6 hours.
That technology restructured our physical reality, and that profound shift is happening again, but this time it's digital.
The digital realm allows for this full expression that isn't judged by the traditional physical gatekeepers, the gallery owners, the city council, the architects.
So if the architecture of the 20th century was defined by the technology, the vehicle, that collapsed distance, then the architecture of the 21st century, the metaverse and its spatial counterparts, will be the crowbar that initiates the next change in how we perceive buildings. Physical reality just doesn't matter as much when the digital overlay is richer or more immediate.
A world where space is detached from culture, context, weather, or history, because you can just toggle those elements on or off.
And if the basic human impulse to mark territory doesn't change, only how we express that spirit changes,
Right.
then the way people react to architecture in the digital sphere will inevitably morph into a kind of graffiti. On platforms with nominal control, anyone can create, modify, or disrupt the appearance of virtual buildings.
It's democratizing the impulse to rebel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes that brave new world of the metaverse, or AR, overlays just a subway car for our cultural spray paint.
That's a powerful metaphor, right? The vehicle for expression is the space itself.
It is, because it suggests the fundamental human impulse to disrupt, to critique, to mark territory. It doesn't disappear, it just changes tools. Instead of a thick marker, you have a coding language or an AR filter. And we are already seeing this intersection play out in physical public spaces with these high-tech interactive murals. They are intentionally bringing art out of museums to democratize interactive art, making the experience contingent on the public.
I love that idea. Murals that are alive, that respond to the community in real time. What kind of technology is actually driving these installations? Because I'm used to a mural just being paint on brick, passive until someone looks at it.
This is where the synthesis of technology gets complex and really interesting. They are leveraging things like solar integration for self-sustaining power, which is critical. This makes remote installations viable, like motion-activated LED murals running completely independently of the municipal grid.
Self-sufficiency.
Nice.
That sounds like a technical nod to the original unsanctioned nature of graffiti.
Then you have the real feedback mechanism, wireless sensor networks, essentially IoT technology.
Okay.
This allows the murals to become cultural mirrors in a whole new real-time way. Imagine a mural that changes color based on local air pollution levels, like switching from bright blue to a deep, sickly yellow as the parts per million of pollutants rises, or displaying abstract patterns that reflect neighborhood noise levels in real time.
So the art isn't just reflecting culture, it's reflecting ecology and the health of the urban environment. It's an immediate, real-time environmental barometer. How is the data integrity ensured, though? Who validates that the ecology the mural is reflecting is actually accurate?
That's a huge question for the governance side, but the goal is generally to use verified, localized sensor data, often from city partners or environmental monitoring stations, to drive the display. It brings the invisible truth of the environment right into public view.
And then you throw in machine learning, which takes it another step beyond just simple data display.
Right.
AI-driven systems can learn from community interaction patterns, causing the mural to evolve over time based on that input.
Yes, it becomes a dynamic partner. If the ML system notices that people spend more time engaging with the mural when it displays certain colors or patterns, or if it sees higher foot traffic when it shows a particular message, the mural evolves its appearance and behavior to optimize engagement.
So the intention shifts from static presentation to a sustained dynamic connection. It completely validates Jen Lewin's philosophy on public art, which I really admire. She said, "It becomes art when people use it."
Yes.
The goal isn't just clever technology, it's about establishing a deeper, more necessary connection between people and places.
Exactly. The tech is just the sophisticated medium for that connection. But once you move from this beautiful, interactive, community-focused public art into the purely digital sphere, the realm of NFTs, The conversation immediately and jarringly turns from community connection to cold, hard assets.
And that's where the structure of the traditional art market just steps in and almost immediately replicates all the same old behaviors and inequalities we thought we were escaping with blockchain.
Okay, let's talk about NFTs. They were heralded as this radical innovation because blockchain provided clear, verifiable proof of authenticity and ownership in the digital realm.
Okay.
Digital artists could finally trace provenance, set resale rights, and get fair remuneration for work that could otherwise be endlessly copied and pasted.
That was a huge advance for digital creators. For decades, the non-physical nature of their work made authorship and ownership this daunting task. A physical work is touched by the artist. A digital work isn't. But the unique, non-fungible code attached to the metadata could guarantee ownership and originality. That's a legitimate technological shift.
It is, but the market structure quickly replicated traditional finance behaviors. High-end NFT-secured works instantly became classic Veblen goods.
Ah, yes.
Items people buy not for their utility or inherent artistic value, but explicitly to signal their wealth and social status.
Conspicuous consumption, but digitized and decentralized. You are buying the ability to publicly display your participation in a high-status, high-value cultural economy.
You see it everywhere, people spending millions on digital items to use as profile pictures or avatars on social media. The status is the utility. The market became dominated by speculators prioritizing profit and rapid return over aesthetics, investing purely in a temporary speculative bubble permitted by the high volatility of the underlying assets.
The structure loves a superstar economy and artificial scarcity. It prioritizes the big names and the perceived rareness of the piece, exactly like the traditional fine art world, which just drives on exclusivity.
But the technology did provide certain artists with an immediate, necessary structural advantage against entrenched institutional bias. I remember reading about Itzel Yard, who goes by the moniker IX Shells.
Oh, her story is fantastic.
She leveraged the gender-neutral anonymity of the crypto platform to massive success.
She became the top-selling female NFT artist in 2021, selling a piece for $2 million.
$2 million.
Yeah. And she started selling work for a fraction of an Ethereum coin, and now her minimum floor price is significantly higher, like a 900% increase in a few years.
And her success is inextricably linked to the platform, allowing her to operate under a genderless username. She could explore female emotion and intersectionality in her work without the gendered distinction and discrimination that is so pervasive in the traditional art world.
The stats are just brutal.
They're staggering. Women artists account for only 9% of the auction market, and 88.3% of the top U.S. museums' collections are by male artists.
So that ability to bypass institutional bias and gallery gatekeepers using technological anonymity is genuinely disruptive. It echoes back to the cyber-feminist net art movement of the 90s.
Oh, right.
Where artists like Shulia Cheen would use the internet's evolving skin to break down gender assumptions or masquerade as a different gender entirely to subvert the male-dominated tech space.
But the legal structure around this new asset class is still so murky. I read that ownership is incredibly complicated.
How so?
NFTs often only confer the holding of the underlying digital asset, not all the copyright or intellectual property rights associated with it.
And we are already seeing the dark, predictable side of that speculative structure, with rapid fraud and insider trading cases.
The famous Frosty's rug pull.
Yes. The creators generated $1.1 million from selling 8,888 NFTs, then suddenly shut down the site, transferred all the proceeds to various digital wallets, and just left investors with empty pockets.
That's conspiracy to commit wire fraud, plain and simple.
Or the OpenSea employee who was charged in the first-ever digital asset insider trading scheme.
Right. They were using confidential information about which NFTs would be featured on the site's homepage and buying them ahead of time.
And then flipping them for massive profits immediately after the announcement.
That case set a key legal precedent, which is what interests me from a structural perspective. The judge ruled that insider trading applies to any misconduct involving the use of non-public information about an asset,
regardless of what that asset is.
whether that asset is ultimately classified as a security or not. The legal system is trying to catch up to the technology, but it's doing so slowly, retroactively, applying old rules to new digital behavior.
And that tension between public goods and private assets gets even stickier and more ethically complicated when public museums start playing this game.
Right, the controversial practice of public museums tokenizing masterpieces. We're talking about institutions like the British Museum and the State Hermitage Museum selling NFT-secured, unique digital reproductions of works that are supposed to be public goods, available to all.
This raises the uncomfortable question of digital deaccessioning.
Exactly. The physical work remains public, yes, but selling a limited, verifiable, authentic digital version creates an exclusive privilege for a handful of wealthy buyers who can afford the 5 or 6-figure price tag.
It privatizes the value derived from a public asset.
Unlike a mass-produced poster, these high-end NFT versions, like the digital prints of Hokusai's famous work, were subject to price discrimination. The highest quality, most limited editions fetched those 6-figure sums. It just recreates the scarcity and privilege of the traditional printmaking market, but digitally.
And the money generated from these sales derives from public goods. Yet what happens to that money remains a pretty opaque topic.
Some museums argue it's an essential alternative form of patronage, especially underfunded European museums facing substantial cuts in government subsidies.
That's the real difficult tension. Museums are struggling to finance collection expansion, maintenance, and basic operations because of rising costs and competitive funding. And now they're forced to turn collection value into asset value just to survive.
I saw the compelling example of the Royal Museum of Fine Arts Antwerp tokenizing James Ensor's Carnaval de Binche using fractional ownership.
Fractional ownership is presented as a solution for democratization.
But it's really a solution for monetization. Investors buy blockchain-registered tokens representing part of the financial rights to the painting. The painting is held on loan by the museum for 10 years before being sold, and the investors get a return based on the eventual sale price.
It forces the institutional sphere, which should be dedicated to cultural preservation and education, to adopt the profit-driven logic of the speculative art market just to maintain its operations.
It changes the very meaning of the art itself, from cultural heritage and educational material to collateral and an investment portfolio.
And we can't talk about the financial assetization of digital art without addressing the massive, unavoidable elephant in the room, the environmental cost.
It is the ultimate ethical contradiction of this technology, and it's what keeps me up at night. The substantial carbon footprint required for minting and selling these assets, particularly on older proof-of-work blockchains like early Ethereum.
The numbers are genuinely shocking and demand attention. The carbon footprint of minting a single NFT was conservatively estimated to be anywhere between 33.4 and 40.8 kilograms of CO2, which, to put that into a relatable context,
Is more than 14 times higher than mailing a physical art print across the country.
and that's just the initial minting. Because these NFTs are bought and resold, the carbon emission generated by the lifetime of those transactions can reach as high as 200 kilograms of CO2.
That's the equivalent of driving roughly 500 miles in an average gasoline-powered car. A digital image generates the same pollution as a road trip.
It's insane.
So you have artists whose core message is environmental preservation, but they have to use this highly emissive technology to get that message out to an audience who understands it.
I was thinking about Barbara Figpecafico, a self-described eco-feminist queer NFT artist.
Right.
She uses the technology to imagine a gender-liberated world where the effects of climate change are reversed, a total utopian future. Yet the technology she's using to share that vision is actively contributing, through its high energy consumption, to the very environmental devastation she wants to reverse.
That's an impossible dilemma.
It makes the art feel hypocritical, even if the artist's intent is pure.
And while Ethereum has thankfully shifted to the much less emissive proof-of-stake consensus mechanism to reduce emissions, the transaction carbon emissions are still substantial enough that it demands serious environmental mitigation strategies.
Which leads us into the financialization of environmental mitigation, the world of carbon offset tokens, like MOSS's MCO2 coin.
So companies and individuals buy these digital certificates to offset their emissions, often tied to buying or developing green spaces like parcels of Amazon jungle land.
That seems like a smart financialized solution, a way to assign economic value to ecological health. But even that is controversial and deeply scrutinized.
Reports have emerged questioning the efficacy of these offset certificates, suggesting that more than 90% of rainforest offset certificates were likely phantom credits.
Phantom credits, meaning they didn't actually lead to any measurable reduction in carbon emissions or deforestation.
Or they were protecting land that was already protected.
It completely undermines the entire ethical premise of the offset market. It suggests that the speed and scale of digital finance can't be trusted to solve the agonizing slowness of real-world ecological decay.
And even when efforts are genuinely commendable, like the band Coldplay promising deep, eco-friendly steps to reduce tour emissions by 50%.
Using kinetic floors to harness fan energy, solar panels, sustainable aviation fuel.
Right. But it's a long-term commitment that still doesn't guarantee the carbon avoided now won't be released back into the climate in the future. The responsibility for mitigation is intense and long-lasting, far beyond the speed of a single transaction.
It's the constant conflict between the speed of digital creation and the agonizing slowness of real-world change. We're moving too fast, and the tools we use are generating costs, environmental, social, ethical, that we simply can't see until it's too late.
And that inability to see the true cost, whether it's the environmental cost or the ultimate privacy cost, is intensely magnified as we move into what people are now calling phygital spaces.
Right, the blurring of physical and digital worlds, driven by extended reality, or XR. We're talking about augmented reality, AR, becoming the defining interface, the persistent metaverse layer that is painted onto the surface of our cities.
AR Core is the kind of underlying technology here, allowing us to place objects and text within physical surroundings with geometric accuracy. It's practical now, not just theoretical science fiction.
Like eBay sellers using AR to superimpose different sized boxes over an item to find the perfect fit and reduce shipping costs.
A purely logistical, structural benefit.
Or Sotheby's Realty, having a Curate AR app to stage virtual furniture and prospective properties, saving agents from the massive expense and hassle of physically renting and storing furniture. It's immediately useful, but it's fundamentally changing what our environment is made of.
And smart glasses, when they become widespread, will be the active mediators of this experience. They aren't just passive display screens. They are powerful computers actively reshaping our social dynamics across 5 categories of interaction.
Person to person, person to space, person to reality, person to machine, and person to platform. That covers everything from mediating trust between individuals to establishing corporate control over the air above a street.
I think we need to zero in on P2S and P2R, person to space and person to reality, because they're the 2 concepts that directly threaten our shared physical environment and our collective grip on truth.
Okay, so P2S is the fear that augmented overlays will fundamentally alter the public sphere to the point of cultural erosion.
Right. If smart glasses provide persistent, real-time AR-based translations, you could literally eliminate local languages and cultural identities from public view, replacing them with a standardized, corporate-approved global script.
Or worse, public streets just become inundated with hyper-targeted digital advertisements, ghost tags that obscure essential real-world information.
The line between essential public information and corporate-driven overlays disappears, and your attention is constantly hijacked. The old physical graffiti was anti-establishment. This new digital graffiti is either a hyper-targeted ad or, more dangerously, disinformation.
Which is the P2R crisis. The weaponization of AR for disinformation. Imagine hyper-targeted overlays that, based on your profile, display fake news banners, misleading road signs, or even deep fake avatars of people you trust.
Leading to massive instant deception. This is a targeted psychological attack overlaid onto the street corner.
This is what fundamentally fractures society. When reality is personalized, when everyone is wearing different lenses with different overlays, how do we maintain a shared understanding of the world?
The scenario of the couple walking through an urban market is chilling. One person filters out all the ads and visual noise with their glasses. The other sees a historical overlay with cultural insights, or maybe even a rival political campaign's banner.
They're occupying the same space, physically, watching side by side, but they're experiencing 2 completely incongruent views of reality. This would lead to fundamental frustration, miscommunication, and eventually the total breakdown of shared cultural understanding.
It's an erosion of a shared experience. We're already seeing that fracture on social media, but now it's overlaid onto the sidewalk, making consensus impossible.
And this personalization means the legal system is wildly unprepared to deal with non-physical trespass and property rights.
Property rights in augmented reality. It sounds absurdly abstract, but it's already generating real legal problems.
The physical invasions and disruptions caused by virtual projections, like Pokemon Go players effectively turning people's actual physical houses into virtual gyms.
And leading to lawsuits, yeah. It demonstrates a desperate need to recognize a property owner's right to exclude intangible affronts to their land.
We're moving past physical trespass to digital trespass. If I own a building, I need the ability to remove unwanted virtual projections, messages, or deepfakes from being overlaid onto my physical property by a third party.
And finally, the psychological shadow we cast in these spaces, the invisible self made visible. I keep thinking about Mark Farid's data shadow installation.
That concept is chilling, and it speaks directly to the emotional vulnerability we carry.
He designed this project to harvest the invisible, real-time personal data emails, credit card swipes, location history, social media traces from volunteers' phones.
And then project that data onto hard surfaces around them as they walk through public space. It forces the invisible private truth to become a public spectacle.
He said his goal was explicitly to make people feel angry, annoyed, and deeply frustrated. He wanted them to confront the casual privacy breaches and to challenge anyone who casually says, "I have nothing to hide."
Right. Let's see if that's true.
Let's see if that's true when your shopping habits, your recent DMs, or a screenshot of your worst search history is glowing on the wall next to you for strangers to read.
The vulnerability of that performance. I mean, I've always been the observer, the one who looks for the patterns and the structures of systems. The idea of having the intimate, messy, disorganized truth of my life, the things I don't want structured, broadcast against my will, that level of exposure is deeply disturbing. We spend so much energy curating a public self.
We do, and I feel that deep down. As someone who studied psychology, I've always been the therapist friend, the one who hears everyone's secrets and holds their emotional truth privately. Sometimes I look at creators who are so publicly confident, so performative, and I feel this weird envy, but I'm also deeply suspicious of how much of that is performance, how much is real. I've posted things I thought were empowering or risky, and then deleted them in a panic, terrified of what I'd exposed about my authentic self.
That's the core tension, isn't it? The need for expression versus the need for protection.
Yes. Farid's piece forces radical transparency where we expect fundamental privacy. When reality becomes phygital, the opportunity for surveillance risks and power imbalances intensifies exponentially.
The physical taggers ran from the police, but their private movements weren't recorded and archived in a GML file. Our data shadow is permanent.
And as we move into this deeply mediated future, we absolutely need transparent governance and oversight to prevent the complete erosion of that private space.
We need concepts like human rights by design and privacy by design to stop being just aspirational buzzwords. They need to be embedded proactively into the technology architecture itself, the air core, the smart glasses, the underlying platforms, before these systems are deployed.
Not after the crisis hits.
Not after we're struggling to understand who owns the digital space above our heads, or who controls the deepfakes we see projected onto the corner store.
We're at a point where the only thing guaranteed to be permanent is the record of our movements and our transactions, while the art we make and the space we occupy are constantly in flux.
Yeah.
It feels less like we're building a new, truly free world, and more like we're just building new, hyper-efficient forms of documentation and new, highly personalized forms of control. This episode is powered by Vivid Voices Media. In the phygital realm, are we moving towards a world where ghost tags and AR overlays redefine public spaces, turning every building into a canvas for rebellion or a breeding ground for digital vandalism?